Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Marc Guzman Experience. This is episode 103, and I have to say it's pretty amazing that we've hit 100 episodes and well in our way to our 200th episode. So, just to remind everyone, I am a property manager and realtor, and if you're interested in any of my services, go to my website at www.markguzman.com. So today, instead of the typical highest and best podcast episode, we're going to do this a little bit differently, and we're going to take it a little bit back to Ask Marc Anything. And in fact, over the last few months, I've been getting quite a bit of various questions from prospective landlord clients, and so I wanted to condense it down. And today, I'm going to be talking about getting your property ready for renting. So let's just jump right into it. One of the common questions I get quite a bit is, should I rent my property occupied or vacant? And my short answer is always rent out your property vacant. The property is empty. It appears bigger. There's no mess or personal distractions to prospects. I mean, think about how many times you've gone to maybe an open house yourself, and you walk into the property, you see the family photos around, and automatically, instead of paying attention to the property, you're paying attention to the photos. And I know it's very, very tempting to see how other people live, but when you're marketing the property, you don't want that when prospects are coming through. And it allows for very simple and good-looking 3D virtual tours. I mean, if you haven't had a chance, go to Matterport 3D Cameras website. Look at sample virtual tours there. That's one of the new hot things to do right now for home sales. And my company, we're bringing that to the property management and rental side. And if your property is cluttered with personal belongings, furniture, it's not going to really show well on these virtual tours. So a vacant property allows someone virtually to walk through the property, or what's really cool is they can put on a virtual headset and actually walk the property as if they're really there. It also allows for staging. Now, home staging is very popular when you're going to sell a property, but in certain circumstances, especially the high-end luxury rental home, you do want to consider possibly staging your home. Now, you're going to be staging for typically 3 to 4 weeks. It's not going to be 3 to 4 months as in a home sale. So make sure to negotiate any staging prices with the staging company. It also allows for prospects to easily measure rooms. This is something that I see very quite often is someone comes in and they look at a room and they'll ask, what are the dimensions of the room? And if we haven't gone through and measured it, we're not going to sit there and quote actual dimension prices. And many prospects will actually have their own tape measures. And so they'll go in and they want to measure rooms. This is much easier to do when the property is vacant. And of course, a vacant property makes it very easy to show. And in fact, one of the new trends right now is self-showings. So instead of an agent or the owner or property manager going with the prospect to the property on every single showing, which takes up a lot of time, what's happening is many management companies are now going to electronic showings. They put an electronic lockbox on the property. People register online, get verified through credit card or driver license identification, and then they're able to access the property via a special code that's unique only to them. And they're able to access the property, see the property themselves, they lock up, they go, and then they apply later. And it makes it very convenient, and it's very easy for prospects to see the property. And in fact, based on studies on initial testing with my company, we're finding that more and more people are seeing the property as opposed to trying to make appointments with agents because, well, frankly, people can see it on their own time, which is extremely convenient. So let's say renting the property vacant is not an option. Maybe you do need to rent the property occupied. Maybe it's occupied by you, the property owner. Well, sometimes this happens due to your budget or due to other reasons, and you cannot vacate and afford multiple payments on different properties. So I still recommend to hire a management company instead of showing properties yourself. When you have there's so many benefits to having a professional, and I think as I get deeper and deeper into this podcast and several other Ask Mark Anythings coming up down the line, and eventually I will be releasing an ebook series later this year, I think you'll see the value in having the property manager. So if you hire an agent or property manager to show your property, leave during showings. It gets very awkward when the property owner is sitting there or watching prospects like a hawk, watching them walk through the property. It's just very awkward. That's what your agent is there to do, to show the property. So leave when there's showings. So it's very similar to selling a house. You need to allow flexibility in showing times. If flexibility on time is difficult, set up small tenant open houses that you can stay consistent with. For example, what I will do sometimes is create an open house from 6 p.m. to 6:30 on Monday and Wednesday, and maybe another open house from 12 to 12:30 on Saturday or Sunday. This allows people to block in or to sign up and register for block times, and it's very convenient for you, the property owner, to allow showings during that time. Now, if your property is tenant occupied, you can also use that exact same strategy. Now, when the property is occupied, maybe your tenant is leaving and you want to show it to a prospective tenant. This does reduce turnover rate if you start marketing the property sooner before that your current tenant leaves the property. Again, the problem is the property is still occupied. Pictures are not going to show well. It's simply not going to show well online, and it's going to be a distraction to people coming in. So I still recommend, even in apartment buildings, you want to rent the property vacant, preferred. Obviously, that's not always the case, and if that's not always the case, then you do the best that you can do. Now, with properties occupied by tenants, one of the issues that landlords come across is, what if your current tenant refuses to allow you entry? Well, this can get very tricky because per state law, you as a landlord have the right to enter the property as long as you give a written 24-hour notice to the tenant that you're bringing in a prospective tenant to look at the property. Now, the tenant can still refuse you access to the property. Now that becomes a violation of the state law, at which point you would serve a 3-day notice to cure. Now, obviously, in various jurisdictions, some cities may have more stringent requirements, so make sure to follow local law first in order to avoid any violations. So if you have a troublesome tenant that refuses entry, that makes it very difficult to show property, you really need to sit down with that tenant, talk to them, communicate with them. Basically, just tell them that you're trying to show the property, you need their cooperation, and hopefully they will work something out with you. If not, you kind of go back to maybe you need to talk to an attorney to see what you can do, or simply just wait until the tenant has vacated the property in order for you to start showing it to any prospective tenants. Now let's talk about curb appeal and also interior appeal. This is one thing that many people don't really talk about when it comes to renting out properties. Now, I'm going to talk about curb appeal from maybe a single family home perspective because, and I think you'll see why here shortly. So for most single family homes, there's usually a type of lawn. Okay, now there are some people that have upgraded their landscaping or changed the landscaping to where it's a really low maintenance yard, but there's still a lot of properties that have a lot of grass area. Make sure to cut it. That's one of the biggest things that throw people off. I mean, think about it yourself. If you're in the market for a home and you pull up to a property and grass is overgrown and the property doesn't look well, you're going to get turned off by that. So On the landlord side, when you're marketing the property, make sure you, number one, cut the lawn. Number two is take a look at your overall landscaping. Do you need to touch it up? Maybe is there something you can do to upgrade or make it look a little bit better? Right now in the San Francisco Bay Area, approximately a third of the people living here are working professionals that want a property with very low yard maintenance. And so anything that you can do to upgrade the lawn or upgrade the landscaping to where it's low maintenance, I would highly recommend considering that. For example, maybe you take out any lawn, any sod, and maybe lay out a lot of bark or rocks. There's various ways to dress it up, and many professional landscape companies can give you tips and tricks on how to make it look better and make it very low maintenance. So highly recommend looking into that. Maybe if you have bushes that require constant trimming, you may want to switch them out with bushes that don't require constant trimming. There are a lot of bushes and small trees that don't require a lot of maintenance, and so I would definitely look into that. Basically what it comes down to is that the trend is moving toward a low maintenance yard. One thing that I highly recommend for people to do is also to drive up to other rental properties and other homes for sale, take photos from the exterior and compare them to your own property. Remember, when you're putting your property on the market, you're not simply just competing with yourself or trying to make your property look as best as possible, but you're competing with every other property on the market. So you want to make sure that not only is your pricing down right, but you want to make sure that your house looks the best both online in photos and both offline in person. So drive around the property or drive around your city to various other rental properties and even homes for sale. Look at how they compare to yours and look at ways that you can dress up your own property in order to compete with those other properties on the market. So look at the exterior of the building. Maybe your building needs a new paint job. And if it needs a new paint job and it's time, then do it. Many times what you can do to avoid a costly paint job for the exterior is maybe do a simple power washing. You will be surprised how a simple power wash of several hours removes so much dirt off the property and makes the building look so much better. So definitely look into that option. Look at windows, doors, garage doors, anything visible. Does your garage door have a dent in it? Are there any broken window panels, maybe holes in the glass? Are there any dents in the doors? Look at all these little tiny items because prospects, when they come up to the property, will look at it. And a property that has very little defects will outshine anything else that's out there on the market because the majority of the people do not look at all these different individual items. Now, if you have a multifamily building, look at it compared to the neighborhood. You want your building to stand out. Make sure it's freshly painted, power washed, there's no trash around. If you have carports, make sure the carports are clean of trash. If you have garages, make sure the garage doors are looking nice. They're not dented, they're painted nicely. Curb appeal matters to a lot of people and to the neighborhood, and you can command a higher rent value if you have a much better curb appeal. Now let's go inside. So let's take a look at the interior appeal. If your property is vacant, this makes it very easy for you to walk through and identify various needed repairs. Number one, look at the paint job. Does it need touch-up paint or do you need a full paint job? One big mistake that I see is many people will paint the interior of their apartment unit or the interior of a house all white. Make it neutral and they just simply do all white. The problem with this is that white walls get dirty extremely fast. I'm a big fan of light gray, even dark gray, maybe accent walls, especially in the high use rooms such as the living room, family room, and kitchen. And it's also nice when you go with a neutral color that's not white, that stands out. It makes a property look more pristine. So definitely colors matter. Look at staging. I mentioned this earlier, but for high-end luxury rentals, staging sometimes is a must. And A good stager will come in and be able to dress up the property. And sometimes, even if you do staging just for the photos, have a stager come in for a couple $100 for one day. They'll stage the property, you get photos done, they remove all the furniture. A proper photographer along with a really good stager can make amazing photos that stand out online. So that's definitely something to look for, and that's a must when it comes down to luxury high-end rentals. So you really want to make the entire flow of the property very cohesive. You don't want too many contrasting colors. You don't want anything too wild. No pink, no red, no black, no yellow. Nothing that really stands out, because that will be, again, very distracting to people and will turn people off, even if they can simply paint it over themselves. And then you want to make sure you have matching features. One thing, for example, is if you have cable in one bedroom, do you have cables in the other bedrooms? Do you have a cable in the living room or the family room? Or what about ceiling fans? If you have a ceiling fan in the living room, you may also want one in the family room. Now, that may not always be possible if you have a property that has vaulted ceilings. But if you have a ceiling fan in one bedroom, you may want a ceiling fan in the other bedrooms. Again, it's not a deal killer. Many prospects, especially in a high demand area, will rent out the property either way. But it is always nice to put together a very cohesive feel to the property. So look at all the different interior items and whatever you can do to spruce up the interior. And many of these cost upgrades, repairs can be done extremely cheap. Property cleanup. Going back to curb appeal and the interior appeal, property cleanup is huge. Going back, cutting the lawn, handling landscaping, trimming bushes, cutting back tree branches. Look for tree branches that may be too close to the roof, too close to power lines. You want to get those cut back because they're going to cause problems down the road, especially if you're going to make the tenant in charge of landscaping in a single family home, for example. Many tenants, again, the trend is looking for low maintenance, and if they're the type of tenant that is not really going to focus on landscaping, they may not be trimming back those trees and bushes. And so as a landlord, you should also be proactive in making sure those get cut back. One of my recommendations is schedule a landscape company to service the property every 2 weeks or once a month. Once a month for sure, but preferably every 2 weeks. And you as a landlord cover that option. That is going to be a very attractive offer when you're renting the property, and a third of the people are looking for low maintenance yards. And if they see that your property has some maintenance or high maintenance, they may be turned off and they don't want to deal with the property or even applying on your rental. So if you schedule a landscape company to take care of it, that then becomes a very beneficial added feature that can command a much higher rent price. And it helps you avoid violations with the city and the counties. You'll be surprised how many cities and counties will drive by properties, and if they see overgrown or a visual nuisance to the neighborhood, they will place fines on the property and force you as the owner to take care of the landscaping. Again, garbage, debris, make sure everything is cleaned up. And if you see anything missing in the yard, such as garden lights or backflow cap devices, make sure you replace it, because again, anything missing, if someone sees it and it stands out to them, they will be looking for anything else in the property that will stand out as missing, and it just hurts the overall appeal of your property. Going back to the interior, if the property is occupied, make sure, if you're the owner, you need to clean up all messes. Clean up clothes, clean up toys, clean the counters. There should be no distractions. Avoid cooking heavy smelling foods maybe 30 minutes to an hour before a showing. You want the home smelling good. You want people to not be distracted by smells and visual with toys and clutter. If it's tenant occupied, it can be very difficult because you cannot force a tenant to be a certain level of cleanliness. So again, you're just going to have to deal with it the best that you can. Do ask the tenant to cooperate with you by cleaning up for showings. And if worst case scenario, if it's vacant, well, not worst case scenario if it's vacant, but keep the property in broom swept condition. As you have showings, the property will get dirty over time. So I know some people are a fan of getting the property professionally cleaned in order to show the property, and then they'll have to get it professionally cleaned again before a tenant moves in because the property does get dirty. One of my recommendations is to simply do a quick sweep cleaning of the entire property, and then prior to a tenant moving in, then you can get it professionally cleaned. Many tenants understand that there's showings and people coming in and out, and if someone does make a comment about the cleanliness, you can simply say, we're going to have this professionally cleaned prior to a tenant moving in. In my experience, many tenants totally understand that and don't make a big deal about it. But look at light bulbs. Missing light bulbs look bad. They just do. So make sure to get those replaced. And make sure to get all these different repairs done prior to marketing. If you start having to do these repairs during marketing and people notice various repairs during the marketing, it does turn off some people. Now, again, if you're in a high demand area like the San Francisco Bay Area, many prospects are not going to really put a lot of emphasis on that if they know you're doing the repairs or they're going to be done before someone moves in. But ideally, repairs would be done prior to marketing. Definitely take a look at your homeowners association if one's applicable to your property. Many homeowner associations do place limits on how many rental properties can be allowed within the association. So before you even rent your property, you need to contact the homeowners association because, number one, they would let you know if your property qualifies to be a rental property. Number two, they would be able to supply you with copies of all the documents, mainly the rules and regulations of the complex or the homeowners association that you will have to disclose to the tenant, and the tenant has to sign off on these documents that they will comply. And most homeowner associations are going to want the tenant's contact information, vehicle information, and any information that's pertinent to them in properly managing the homeowners association. And so those are my tips in getting the property listed, ready for sale. This entire AMA is going to be condensed into an ebook later this fall. It will be a lot more detailed, and my plan is to have some visuals included in that ebook and maybe some interactive videos, which is pretty neat to do on ebooks. So hopefully this was a great Ask Mark Anything episode for you. Episode 103 of the Marc Guzman Experience. We will be back tomorrow with episode 104. Definitely check that out. If you're not following the podcast, please subscribe. You can find it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You can watch it live on Facebook and catch the replay videos also on Facebook and YouTube. Again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman, who does a phenomenal job in helping me put this podcast together with amazing guests. Please check out the podcast. There's a little bit of everything for everyone, from the Chabot Space and Science Center to scientists to book authors to winemakers, beer makers, delis, and it's an amazing podcast, amazing experience I've had in meeting so many different people, and I really just want to share that experience, and the people who live here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I really just want to share their experience, my experience with you. So again, thank you for listening.